Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I get to take my brand new Ultra League build, XL Seismitoad, for a spin in the Ultra League. Now, this was about 400,000 stardust to max out the Seismitoad for the Ultra League and double move it, and I do have pretty high hopes for it. Last season, the Ultra League was dominated by the pairing of Zygarde, Tinkaton, and Fortress, and Seismitoad on paper should have winning matchups into all three of those Pokemon. To round out the rest of the team, I'm running double normal in the back with Licky and one of my Ultra League favorites, Toucannon. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we get a very nice lead in the first game, Seismitoad into Zygarde. Even better, the Zygarde is not pivoting out, so it appears there's something in the back that is also weak to the Toad. Seismitoad is such a massive pacing advantage over Zygarde. Icy Wind not only gives guaranteed attack drops, but hits for double super effective damage as well. Zygarde hits back with the Outrage. That was a -1 Outrage. Outrage is about to be at -2 momentarily, as this Icy Wind will come very close to knocking out. Zygarde hangs on. It's such an incredibly bulky Pokemon. They're gonna fire off energy, but this can only be a Bulldoze or a Crunch, so I can tank the Bulldoze and then get the Mudshot down. My opponent brings in their own Seismitoad, and honestly, I'm pretty weak to Seismitoad energy in the back, so even though I know my Seismitoad is good into their final Pokemon, I can't really afford to pivot. I fire off the Icy Wind, lowering my opponent's attack, and now I'm going to look to lock in damage with Earth Power. I've gotten so much damage onto my opponent's Seismitoad, and it looks like they would have barely missed the farm down. They're forced to fire off Icy Wind, and my Seismitoad put in so much work. I now just get to send in Licky, look to absorb some energy as they fire off the Icy Wind. In the back is Registeel, and this is a very big problem. Registeel got buffed this season. Flash Cannon got a slight reduction in terms of energy cost. That means Registeel is faster than ever. They full send the Zap Cannon. They do not get the debuff, and that is a bit of good luck going my way. By correctly shielding the Zap Cannon and them not debuffing me, even though everything is resisted, Beak Blast is an incredibly efficient move, so Beak Blast will actually do very valuable damage. Beak Blast lands, they're now going to be at -2. I pivot into Licky just to force a switch out into the Seismitoad. As long as I comfortably stay outside of Zap Cannon range, I should be in a pretty good spot. My opponent has not revealed their second charge attack just yet, but I assume they are on Zap Cannon plus Flash Cannon, and that means they just simply cannot KO Licky from this health range. Back in comes the Registeel. Lock-on goes through as I fire off the -1 Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball doesn't do a lot of damage, but the moment they throw energy at Licky, the game is over because I have Shadow Toucannon and a shield. Flash Cannon lands, in comes Shadow Toucannon, and this is just a pacing war that the Registeel can never hope to win. Shadow Toucannon does not like Registeel whatsoever, but with enough chip damage on it from other matchups, Shadow Toucannon's actually going to be able to take the game 1 win. They go for another Flash Cannon, racing to a third, but we get the Drill Peck. They're low enough, Drill Peck is going to be securing the knockout, and that's a good game. Hopping into game number 2, we lead Seismitoad into Tinkaton, another very strong lead. My opponent's going to save switch into a Guzzlord, and they are very weak to Seismitoad. Granted, Seismitoad's coverage is not often seen in the Ultra League, so I can understand why people are team building without it in mind. But after getting the Icy Wind debuff, I can now go for a catch and sneak onto Licky, and I'm already very far ahead in this game. A debuff Guzzlord is never going to be able to make a play for a switch advantage. The one thing I will have to be mindful of is the desync in the switch timer. My opponent fires off yet another debuff Brutal Swing. I'm going to wait the turn here to watch for a potential catch on a Tinkaton. There's the switch, in comes Tinkaton, but I get to fire off the correct charge stack in Shadow Ball. Clocks up, and it's back into the Seismitoad. Seismitoad is going to look to overfarm. I'm going to CMP tie Earth Power to the Gigaton Hammer, and I hope this is going to be enough to knock them out. Earth Power lands, Tinkaton survives. It's so bulky in the Ultra League. That Earth Power did huge damage, but Tinkaton will get to land the Gigaton. I don't think my opponent's Guzzlord is quite in Icy Wind range just yet, so I'm actually not going to throw energy. Instead, I'm going to look to overfarm and put up a shield. I want to knock out their second to last Pokemon, so whatever they have in the back gets guaranteed Icy Wind debuffed. I think Earth Power does slightly more, so I go for the Earth Power. It takes the KO. In the back is an Acid Credilli. Now the Credilli is going to be perpetually attack dropped for the remainder of the game. Icy Wind is no shielded. I pivot into Shadow Toucannon, and Toucannon is going to get the Charge Stack Priority Tie, Drill Peck to the Rock Tomb. Even a -1 Rock Tomb would hit for way too much damage onto Toucannon, so as they shield, I'm more than happy to give the final shield back, and then I'm going to throw 6 Pecks to try and CMP tie them to their next Rock Tomb. My opponent should always try and overfarm here, and they do. Very nice energy management from my opponent. They're not going to go for the CMP tie. Instead, they know they need to try and have as much residual energy on Credilli as they can possibly get. Unfortunately, they basically needed to be one off here, and they were not able to get enough energy. They were close, but not close enough. Licky makes the Shadow Ball, knocking out Credilli and securing the win. We move to game number 3, picking up a slightly negative lead, Seismatode into Shadow Dusknoir. I would love to catch a Shadow Punch onto Licky, so I'm going to throw 7 Mud Shots and go for the catch. I farm up, but my opponent throws on alignment. They knew if they threw on 5, I was going for that catch, so they throw the move as soon as they get it, and by not throwing on the usual timing, the move's able to land on its intended target. I fire off Earth Power, they put up the shield. If they try and throw on good timing, I can make Earth Power number 2, but they're not going to let me get there. Instead, they're just going to keep Dusknoir healthy and knock out the Seismatode. But now I can send in Toucannon, my opponent pivots out into Tinkaton, and at this moment, I have a lot of regrets over letting the Seismatode go. Seismatode is my dedicated answer to Tinkaton. I no shield, take huge damage from Gigaton Hammer, and this game looks like a very difficult one to win. Even though Shadow Ball is one of the most efficient charge stacks in the entire game, Ultra League Tinkaton tanks 2 Shadow Balls like it's nothing. Tinkaton tanks it still in the yellow. Tinkaton gonna look to overfarm quite extensively and then take the knockout with Gigaton Hammer. I just have to hope that Shadow Toucannon can 1v2 in the back. In the back, it's a Raikou, and this game is over. I fire off the Beak Blast connects. Wait, maybe there's actually a chance. This is not a Volt Switch Raikou, it's a Thundershock Raikou, and I got huge damage onto them with that Beak Blast. Is there ever a world in which I can go for a peck down? I think that's my only chance of winning. So I put up the shield as they go for the Aura Sphere, commit to the peck down, and exit close to 100 energy. My opponent still has the Dusknoir. It's pretty far away from a move. They're waiting down the timer. In comes the Dusknoir, and I will go for the Drill Peck bait. I'm hoping against hope that my opponent will use the shield here. They do shield Noir. They send in Tinkaton. I double up on Drill Pecks, and that's going to be a CMP tie. This is big. Drill Peck will take the knockout. Back in comes Dusknoir. We get to the Beak Blast, and somehow we survive. Shadow Toucannon remains oh so busted in the Ultra League, as we're somehow able to get a win. We get a very bad lead in the next match, Seismatode into Shadow Toucannon. I'm going to save switch into Licky and fire off the Body Slam right before they're able to make the Beak Blast. Shadow Toucannon is so incredibly strong, and that means if your opponent has it, you're probably going to be in for a very long battle. I'm worried my opponent's going to go for 1 and a catch here, so I just look to overfarm. They stay on the field, I go for the Body Slam, and they get the catch and sneak onto Skeledirge. I overfarm to not let them get the catch. They get the catch anyway. That is absolutely catastrophic. I banked the Shadow Ball for later since I was debuffed, and now I send in the Seismatode. Seismatode will take some pretty big damage from Shadow Ball. The good news is I will barely be able to outpace. I don't know if Earth Power can take the knockout here. Skeledirge has some pretty nice bulk. Skeledirge hangs on with 1 HP remaining, and I'm forced to basically just fully sacrifice Seismatode. Seismatode gets KO'd, but I have a ton of energy on Licky. Toucannon does not have a Beak Blast. I believe they're at 6 pecks of energy, and I fire off the Body Slam. Body Slam will connect. I fire off Body Slam number 2. This is going to be taking the knockout unless they put up the shield. It does take the knockout in the back. It's another Dusknoir, and with Shadow Toucannon in the back, this game was always going to be a win. My opponent realizes there's just no stopping Shadow Toucannon. Shadow Toucannon is just simply too good. My opponent having Toucannon was very, very scary, but luckily we're still able to get the win. We move to the next game, and what a lead, as we lead Seismatode into Stunfisk. My opponent save switches into Togekiss, and this is actually a winning matchup for Seismatode if Seismatode is up at least 1 turn. However, I need to preserve Seismatode for the Stunfisk, so after Icy Winding and debuffing them, I'm going to send in Licky to absorb Aura Spheres. Aura Sphere will hit for super effective, but due to that attack drop, my opponent should not be able to make a play for switch advantage. Aura Sphere number 2 connects. I decide to get greedy, and I will go for the Body Slam. I'm hoping Body Slam is going to put them into 2 rollout range. Body Slam connects, Togekiss falls to the rollouts, and that is very, very helpful. Now as they bring back in the Stunfisk, my Licky has a decent amount of health remaining. It's going to be very awkward to try and get a Thundershock down. Shadow Ball lands. I can even make Shadow Ball number 2 here. I try and get there, but my opponent's going to cut off my damage as they fire off the Discharge. Discharge takes the KO. I send in Seismatode in the back. It's going to be Clefable, and I immediately respond with Shadow Toucannon. Shadow Toucannon will not appreciate Meteor Mashes whatsoever, so I put up the shield, and I'm just going straight for the Beak Blast. I need to stack these attack drops as quickly as possible because Shadow Toucannon is a very frail mon. The good news is a debuff Meteor Mash will not knock out now. My opponent will have to go for the Moonblast. So I respect the Moonblast. I get baited with the Meteor Mash. That's a very nice call from my opponent. I'm now just going to be firing off Drill Pecks. I've debuffed them. They're going to be needing to go for a Moonblast to knock me out, and that is going to be a lot of energy down the drain. So unfortunately, Toucannon will get knocked out here by the Moonblast, but now my Seismatode is in a position to sweep. Seismatode hits the field. My opponent's going to bank a Meteor Mash, send out the Stunfisk, and I'm honestly a little bit worried. My opponent does have a Meteor Mash banked. If the Stunfisk is able to get multiple Mud Bombs, I don't know who wins charge stack priority. Mud Bomb into the Seismatode does actually do a decent amount of damage. I commit to the farm down. I cannot get it, and my opponent's going to make Mud Bomb number 2. It all comes down to this. Who wins charge stack priority? In comes Clefable. They don't fire off the energy, and we're going to take the win. I did look it up after the game. It turns out Seismatode does win charge stack priority over Clefable. Not by much, but it should be a pretty consistent CMP win for the Toad. Toad is feasting in the next match as we lead into Skeledirge. My opponent safe switches into Toucannon, and I'm more than happy to just fire off Icy Wind. I will, however, want some energy for the Skeledirge, so I end up farming up 4 and then switching into Licky as my opponent fires off the Beak Blast. This is not a Shadow Toucannon, it's the regular, and thanks to that debuff, I can survive actually 2 Beak Blasts, and that's my goal. Try and exit up a ton of energy and with minimal health for that Skeledirge to farm. So I end up CMP tying here, they go for the Beak Blast, that's going to put me very, very low, and I'm at the back-to-back Body Sams, and I'm 1 off the Shadow Ball. Body Sam is shielded, I wait the turn, the game does not visually update, and they get the catch and sneak onto the Skeledirge. That is an absolutely tragic turn of events. That energy from Licky all goes down the drain. And now I send in Seismatode. Shadow Ball would not knock out. I put up the shield and I end up getting Torch Song baited. This game is just going off the rails. Oh my goodness. I fire off the Earth Power. They put up the shield. They do have enough for a boosted Shadow Ball. And realistically, I cannot afford to let that land. I put up the shield. I'm going to look to overfarm massively. Their timer will be up. They're able to send in Toucannon, but Toucannon's going to be instantly sent back to the Pokeball courtesy of Icy Wind. So Icy Wind will take the knockout. My opponent brings back in the Skeledirge, but I have enough for the Earth Power. I've decided I'm just going to blind switch into Shadow Toucannon. Earth Power takes the knockout. In the back is Tinkaton, and I've made a huge error. They're going to outpace. I throw 6. I wait the turn, and I get the CMP tie Drill Peg to Gigaton Hammer. They had to throw Gigaton instantly, otherwise I could have made the Beak Blast. So I throw 6, I wait the turn, and now I CMP tie. My opponent undercharges Gigaton Hammer. That gives them 2 Fairy Winds. This is going to be close. How much residual do I have on Seismatode? It turns out the answer is just enough. We make the Earth Power KOs the Tinkaton, and that's a good game. We get another great lead in the next match, Seismatode into Galarian Weezing. My opponent safe switches into Dondozo. I sent in Licky assuming that it was for Alligator, but no, it's one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, Dondozo. Dondozo is so stupidly bulky in the Ultra League. Look at that damage. I fired off a Shadow Ball and it did nothing. Dondozo goes for the Surf. I was a little bit expecting them to go for the Outrage there, as it does do more damage overall, and I end up CMP tying Shadow Ball to their second Surf. Shadow Ball will put them pretty close to the red HP. Surf is definitely going to be putting me into the red HP. The question is, can I make 2 Body Sams before they farm me down? It looks like, unfortunately, the answer is no. I'm going to get very close to the 2 Body Sams, but I'm not quite going to have enough energy. They're going to shield, and my opponent is going to be winning switch advantage. This means that my Seismatode is no longer going to be switch locked onto the Galarian Weezing, but I have a very angry Toucannon that I would like to introduce to them. So I'm going to let them fire off the back-to-back Surfs, and then it's time to send in the Toucan. Surf number 2 connects, in comes Toucannon looking for the farm down, they pivot out and send in Galarian Weezing. Weezing gonna fire off what can only be a Brutal Swing. However, Brutal Swing still does a decent amount of damage on a Toucannon, so I will put up the shield. I'm gonna overfarm CMP type Beak Blast to Brutal Swing number 2, and this Beak Blast is gonna hit for devastating damage. Beak Blast is gonna be shielded. This is a -1 Brutal Swing, but I still decide to put up the shield. I'm going to throw 3 pecks and then snipe them with the Earth Power that I had banked. So I try and go for it, but the switch timer didn't come up in time for me to snipe. Instead, I end up catching the Brutal Swing, and that is basically the worst possible play that I could have made in this situation. I should have just stayed in, Beak Blasted on the CMP tie, taken the knockout, and been in a very good spot. But instead, my opponent gets reverse farm with Feraligatr, and Feraligatr can actually survive a Beak Blast from full HP because it's the non-shadow. Beak Blast connects, there's the Hydro Cannon, and I was in such a good spot to close out the game, but unfortunately, I just completely botched the mid-game, and that cost me the win. We've got a Seismatode mirror in the final match, and I could not be more excited. Honestly, I have no idea how to play out the Seismatode mirror. I decided to just go for the Icy Wind right off the bat. This is going to lower my opponent's damage and increase my survivability, and now I feel pretty confident no shielding even if they go for the Earth Power. My opponent goes for an Icy Wind themselves, I fire off the Earth Power, and it turns out my Seismatode actually wins charge stack priority. This is pretty nice. I'm able to inflict some pretty nice damage onto their Seismatode, and now I have to decide, when do I actually want to pivot out of the matchup? I decide I'm just going to stay in, my opponent safe switches into Corviknight, and I respond with Licky. Licky does actually sneak through a rollout there. I don't know if my opponent ended up lagging a turn or what happened, or maybe they tried to CMP tie, but either way, I'm very happy to get a free rollout. That is 13 free energy onto my Licky. Now I can fire off the Shadow Ball, Corviknight will put up the shield, and because this is the Ultra League, even if Corviknight lands 2 paybacks, I will still be able to tank that damage pretty comfortably. Unfortunately, that also means my opponent's going to be able to tank the Shadow Ball from Licky very comfortably as well. They full send payback number 2. I'm able to hang on, and I'm going to send out Shadow Toucannon. This can only be an Air Cutter. Air Cutter will start to add up over time. Like, I can tank 1, but I'm going to have to shield the 2nd. I wasn't quite confident that a Beak Blast would KO, so I put up the shield, and I'm just going to look to overfarm and try and exit with a lot of residual energy. So I farm up just shy of 100, full send the Beak Blast, and Beak Blast is going to be erasing Corviknight from the field of play. So I do have quite a lot of energy on this Shadow Toucannon. My opponent has a Sylveon in the back, and what a catch! They catch the Beak Blast onto the Seismatode. I go for the undercharge, but it still knocks out. My opponent brings back in the Sylveon. Sylveon overfarms too much, and they play to a CMP tie that they do not win. My opponent was in the driver's seat of this match after that catch, but they weren't quite sure of how much energy that I had, and that CMP tie will cost them. My opponent actually ended up throwing a Shadow Ball at the Toucannon, which was a huge surprise to me, but I realized after the game that my opponent was actually on double nuke Sylveon with Shadow Ball and Moonblast. I assume Psyshock Shadow Ball is probably going to be preferred on Sylveon. I know in the Ultra League, everything is quite a bit bulkier, so you do oftentimes need extra damage, but for Sylveon, I think the Psyshock pacing is just too valuable to give up. Shadow Ball will take the knockout. I can bring in Toucannon, get the peck down, and take the win. And now some final thoughts on my newest Ultra League build, XL Seismitoad, and its place in the Ultra League meta. Overall, I did go decently positive with this team. I don't know if this is the best team to support Seismatode for the Ultra League. I just really like Shadow Toucannon. The vast majority of Ultra League teams that I build, unless it would just make absolutely no sense to have Toucannon on the team, will probably have Toucannon on the team because Toucannon, it's just too strong. And I feel like a lot of this team's success was largely due to the fact that I'm very comfortable playing Shadow Toucannon. So in a lot of games, I could kind of more or less use Seismatode as a damage sponge, Licky as a damage sponge, and then just let Shadow Toucannon absolutely pop off. I also, at the same time, feel that I didn't really play particularly well today in these battles, so I feel like that a little bit hinders my ability to give a very strong review on how XL Seismitoad performs in the Ultra League. I think XL Seismitoad is a fine Pokemon. I think you can use it and probably have some pretty decent results. I do like the fact that it does have the ability to break like Fortress, Zygarde, and Licky, Tinkaton. The Licky matchup, I believe you do need to go Icy Wind first, otherwise that matchup can get a little bit spooky since 2 Earth Powers do not pick up the 2-hit KO. But I think it has some intriguing coverage and it's going to catch a lot of teams off guard. I don't think it breaks its way into top meta contention just due to the fact that there are a lot of matchups, especially neutrally, where at times it can feel a little bit underwhelming. It's a Pokemon that if you end up losing lead to it, it's probably going to be very, very difficult to come back from. Because, let's say like the Stunfisk Togekiss team, for example, if you're safe switching a Togekiss into a Seismatode, Seismatode being up a turn means that Seismatode, I'm pretty sure, just wins the matchup. At the very least, it does in the Great League. I assume in the Ultra League, it would probably perform pretty similarly, where if you're up that little bit of energy, then it's an incredibly difficult Pokemon to deal with. So I think for a lot of my Ultra League teams that I end up building from here on out, I'm going to try and build strong into Seismatode lead, because I think that is where Seismatode is at its strongest. Its ability to debuff and then send in something bulky, like on this team, a Licky just to absorb hits, can really set up the rest of the team for success. So overall, if I was giving Seismatode in the Ultra League a grade, I think I'd probably give it like a low B. I feel like Seismatode was fine. I don't think Seismatode is like an absolute meta shaker after trying it. I will definitely want to try this Pokemon again when I feel like I'm playing a little bit better, but all in all, I did have fun in my sets. I did go positive, but again, I think that was largely just due to the fact that Shadow Toucannon is an absolute menace. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.